people down there, and so they're drawing down the water supply very quickly. So it's really human forced drought, not weather forced drought as much as anything else. But the plan is actually about to be, it's in front of the legislature this year, should be approved. It really just creates a template for how to manage water. And the biggest thing about it is water conservation. What they're really looking for everyone in the state to do is figure out ways to conserve water. Angie and I are working with the agricultural community, and I'm not going to talk about it today, but we're working with small farmers and new beginning farmers to help them be more resilient in the face of drought. So what tools can we give them so that when the drought comes, they're better prepared? And mostly it turns out that what they need is another well. They need a supplemental well in their system to kind of pump a little extra water when that time comes. So by having that access to another well on their property, it actually makes them far more resilient in the face of drought. But we're working with some other businesses, and we want to really try and reach out to folks like yourselves as homeowners because everything matters. This is one case where every single thing matters. Every drop counts, as it says here. And what we've done is we've connected with the University of Georgia and several other states to ask folks to participate in the 40-gallon challenge. So if you just put this in to your browser sometime in the future, you can actually sign up to be part of the 40-gallon challenge. Essentially it says, I'm going to pledge to try and save 40 gallons of water every day. So just change my lifestyle by a little bit and save 40 gallons every day. And yes?
Yeah. Since most of us here probably have our own pumps, I mean,
Right.
we get our
Private
water-
wells?
Private wells. Now, does this mean, and when our water goes back to our septic system, so it's like we have a loop. Should we be involved in something like this? Does this make any sense for us? I can see when you're using a city water supply, it would.
Every drop counts. And
Even
it
in
matters
our
for you
case,
because if you're drawing that, so, I don't have a geologist right here, I better be careful and not step over my bounds, but the groundwater supply for this region, let's just think of it as, this is a very easy, big simplification, but imagine it's just a big level field, right? And it's a field of water. So if you put your well in here and start pumping water out, it pulls it down. If I put my well in over here, it pulls it down. And if we all start doing that all over the place, it pulls the whole thing down.
But
So,
my water's going back through my septic system.
but it doesn't go back to the same place where it started. So your septic system is connected to superficial kind of thing, in the ledge and all the soil and whatever. Your well is probably 300 or 400 feet down in some cracked up, broken, fractured aquifer that they're pumping the water out of. And if I move in next to you and build a new house, and maybe I build a really big house, and I want to have 7 bathrooms, and I want to run the water all the time, your well's going to go dry, because I'm going to be pumping all my water. Maybe I'll sink my well a little deeper than yours, so I can pump all your water plus some extra water. So it matters for everyone, because all those interactions, even private well interactions, that's water that's being drawn out of one aquifer. Now, we're fortunate that most of that water gets replenished fairly regularly in Connecticut. But when you see this in other states, what happens is they start pulling the water down, and then suddenly you notice that your well's not pumping quite as much water. And that can happen because it doesn't even have to be your neighbor. It could be 5 miles away, but it's connected through that same big aquifer. We decided we're going to put in a new neighborhood, and we're going to build 25 new houses in there, and they're all going to have wells. And then suddenly those 25 wells are affecting your well water as well. And the state water plan is all about how we protect your rights as a citizen to make sure that their activity doesn't affect your ability to have safe, clean, healthy water. But that's a really great question because you think, hey, I'm not connected. It's kind of like being off the grid. I'm not on the grid. Why should I worry? Well, because all those water systems actually do connect at different places. And so you do want to try and, it's a great question, and it's a difficult answer. So, yes?
So the 40-gallon challenge that's the amount you want to conserve? What's the average person use per day?
Oh, this is like the perfect setup. We're gonna talk about Thank you. You're like right on in the wheelhouse here. So we're gonna talk a little bit about how much water do we use in a day. And so Angie and I talked about this, and at first I wasn't gonna put my name in the game, but all the numbers that you see from like the various, like we just went through and plugged it into some calculators. These are the data from my house, so, don't shame me for being a water user. So just quickly, kind of the water footprint, it's everything. So as it turns out, water is in everything if you kind of extract how we make a product. It's in everything we have, everything we buy, everything we sell, everything we use, everything we eat, and of course we drink water, right? So that it's in everything. And your footprint is a measure of all the water that's used both in that product. If you buy a soda, of course, it's mostly water, right? But it also took extra water to grow the sugar that went into your Coke. It takes water to process the aluminum that is in the can. So all of those products have they have the obvious water that you can see, but they also have kind of what we'll talk about, the hidden water. And that's the big secret in your water footprint. So now, and these are just some places, so I don't know, Steve, if you want me, if anybody is really interested, there are places you can go, but these are 3 examples of where we went in and looked at water footprints, and it's my footprint, so I can be embarrassed about it all. So here we go. How many gallons of water do you use in a day? Well, if you had a city, how many people have city water? You get a private water or a water provider.
UConn water?
Oh yeah, that's okay. Right. They send you a bill, don't they? That's what matters. If you get a bill, then yeah, you're on the water system. So I live over in Coventry. Coventry provides us with city water, but we actually have septic. So we're kind of a hybrid of the model you're talking about. We don't actually have we don't have private wells, but we do have public water supply. We have
in Coventry Hills you're speaking of?
I live over in Coventry, up on Grant Hill Road.
Oh.
In the town of Coventry. So.
Okay, because I live on Coventry Lake, and
you probably have a well.
Septics around there, yeah. And
yeah, well, so that's another day too. So maybe I'll come back another day and talk about the lakes and the septics and all the good things that we have going on there. Then I'll call my geologist friends to help me. So how much water do we use in a day? So this is just one calculator, and for me, my water footprint, 1,900 gallons a day, and that's me, and then my household, almost 5,000 gallons a day, and the average for the US is 2,200. Now before you get all worked up and think, what the heck is this guy doing in his house? He's like manufacturing big stuff. No, that's not exactly it. So this is just one estimate. Comes from the water footprint calculator. Here's another estimate. So 99 gallons a day. And this is the in-home water use. And so you get a completely different picture. And the big reason is right here. Doesn't include food. So the interesting thing about water calculators is you'll want to know what's behind it before you before you start making a lot of big changes in what you do. So this one comes up to 99 gallons a day, and it's actually split into a lot of different parts. Try another one. So here's the one I love the most. This is the international, the kind of original water footprint calculator. 1,500 cubic meters per year, which is about 1,100 gallons a day. And look, here you go. This is why it's kind of interesting. Food, 1,500. Everything else in my life, 60 cubic meters per year. And then down here, contribution of different food things. It's meat. And then where's the other one? Everything else, a little bit of fruit. This is coffee. Everybody drinks a cup of coffee in the morning, or if you do, coffee and tea, and we'll show you how that all works out. But just to give you some sense, there's a lot of variability in what a water footprint might look like, but the important thing for you is it consists of multiple things, and they vary depending on which one you're looking at. So what I'm going to do, I want to stop in a minute here, and I'm going to show you this slide, and then I'm going to actually stop. So this is our direct water use. So in the house, if we talk about indoor water use, where do we basically, where do we see things? The bathroom, number one on our list. Bathroom, Yeah, everybody's got the same floor plan, I'll bet too, right? Kitchen, this is not actually my floor plan. Bathroom, kitchen, and then the laundry. So 3 big areas in the house. Now, we're gonna take a minute, since I brought all this with me, I wanna stop. Everybody's gonna get to do a little homework. There's no reason to come down here if you don't get a test, right? So, and I'm sure Steve was prepared for this. So I'm gonna circulate these pieces of paper. Here, why don't we start with it? I'll give you a handful of pencils too. Because you're gonna need to do some figuring and ciphering here. You can opt out if you want. There's no requirement that you actually fill these out. But since Angie spent so much time doing it, I hope that you'll at least give it a try.
Oh, wait, here's the other one.
There's some pencils for you. If anybody needs paper, pencil, whatever, I'll share that with you for now. So, how we doing? Pretty good? Moving around? Need some more? Need some more papers? Oh, I got tons. We give these out. We do this more than once. This is always like that's true. You don't do it every day, right? So what I would just say, here's what I would ask you. If you're thinking about laundry, you know, I usually do 3 loads of laundry in a week. So I do 1 probably every other day. That's a rough average. So that means I do about a half a load of laundry. So just give yourself if you do about 2 or 3 loads a week, just divide it out, you know, kind of make a educated guess. Anybody have a low flow shower head in their house? What's low flow to you? How many gallons a minute? Do you know how many it puts out? I bought a new shower head because I had one of these fancy shower heads, and I turned it on and the water was ice cold for it felt like forever, right? So it took like 5 minutes for the shower to warm up. Well, I was watching all this water go down the drain and said, I'm buying one of these low flow shower heads. It's like a I don't know, like a fire hose, but it's only this big. The nozzle's this big, and it's like a fire hose. It hits you. My wife doesn't even want to take showers anymore. She's like, that thing is annoying because it's so powerful. So anyway, but it puts out exactly 1.5 gallons of water in a minute, and I've measured it for 5 minutes and capture all the water. It's right on target. Most low flow shower heads that you can buy commercially are going to be in the 2.5 gallons a minute range. Most shower heads, if you just get the standard one that comes out of the box, like normal shower heads, about 3 to 3.5 gallons a minute, and they're all over the map because they're not really calibrated. So when you buy, if you buy really nice low flow shower heads, they'll generally put out about 1.5 gallons a minute, which is considerable savings, I would say.
For the comics readers like me, Doonesbury now is having something on low flow showers.
Well, and if you're old enough, you remember the Seinfeld episodes where they had the low flow showers and they couldn't get their hair clean, so they would stand under there, it was dripping on them. And then I think Kramer bought that, he bought the shower head that was that big.
Yes.
To put out all the water.
The rain one.
Yes. But just, go through if you can, make some guesses. Don't bother too much with the outside stuff. If you don't water your lawn, it's February. You shouldn't have to water your lawn right now, so we'll kind of leave that part out for now. And give yourself, what do you think you spend in the shower, if you take a bath, if you brush your teeth for 2 minutes, you probably leave the water running for about 30 seconds if you're lucky, right? That's not a very big one. But sometimes you have to turn it on if you want to wash your face and you don't want it to be ice water. You have to turn the faucet on, let it run a minute or two to wash your face. So just kind of do some estimates. I once counted, I spent the whole day keep track of how many times I went to the bathroom. It was embarrassing to know, because, if you drink a lot of water, so the doctor says, hydrate, drink water, so I do. So what do I end up doing? I end up going to the bathroom all day long. So, it's like I drink a cup of water, I flush 2 gallons. It's like, this is not working out for anybody.
You don't have to flush every time you go.
Good answer. Good answer. That's right. Good catch. And that's one way to save water.
Right.
And then, you've got your laundry stuff. So anybody able to sort of go through and come up with a number? What do you get, Steve?
155.
155?
Did you turn the page over?
No. Don't do the back yet. Don't do the back. That's a totally different game. Just do the front side with UConn. Yeah. Let's just work on the front for now. How many gallons did you get on the front side?
111.
111.
Oh, my.
Oh my, you guys do your dishes by hand? What do we got going on there? A lot of hand washing dishes
I
and
got 21.
take 2 baths a day? Is that it? That's a killer.
No, yeah, no.
Is this just for ourselves or the house?
Just yourself. Do yourself for now.
57.
57.
Okay.
I got an efficient toilet.
It's, if you have the old school toilets that are like 5 gallons,
Now, this one is half, 3/4 of a gallon,
really, you got like the super efficient toilet.
what do they call it?
So I'm gonna send around another page. You don't have to do anything with this one. I just want you to look at it. So a friend of mine, when I was talking to him about this, another colleague from UConn said, "Oh, I did this water footprint thing before it was even water footprint." And so look at the difference. Just go ahead and take a look at the difference in the numbers that they had. This was done in 1993, and they were comparing. They're literally doing the exact same exercise in 1993. The toilets use 5 gallons of water every minute. Every time you flush, 5 gallons of water. I mean, there are so many efficiencies that technology has come up with to conserve water in all sorts of different ways. That's all, I only had like 6 or 7.
That's sorry.
It just,
Share.
Yeah, just look at them and compare, because if you compare what you're doing today, and you were doing it 25 years ago, you'd be spending twice as much water 25 years ago to do the very same thing. Your laundry would be your laundry would be less efficient 25 years ago, your showers were less efficient 25 years, toilets were less efficient, dishwashers were less efficient, everything. They've come up with new ways to save water in all these devices. And yet, okay, so I heard 150, down to 60-something gallons, 57 gallons. I went through one day and I got it down as low as like 37 gallons. That was what I kind of figured I'd used myself in whatever, however long it was, in like one day. But I didn't take a shower. I really cheated a little bit because I was like, I'm not taking a shower today because I'm going to save some water. Nobody liked it except me. So here's the 40-gallon challenge. And so now that you've done it, right, what can you do? What are the things that we're trying to help people think about to make a difference? Shorten your shower by 2 minutes. Typical shower head's 2.5 gallons, so you're going to save 5. So that's an easy one. Now you're like +5. What's 2 minutes in the shower? Not a lot. And you can get it in 2 different ways. You can either go faster, which is sort of less appealing, or turn the water off when you're in the middle of the shower, right? You're lathering up. You don't need the water going down the drain when you're lathering your hair. I'm running out of hair, so it's kind of saving me water right off the bat. But shorten your shower. That's a really easy way to pick up a few gallons. If you're brushing your teeth, 8 gallons is, if you leave it running to get it warm, there's a bunch of water that's going down the drain. Now, if you put it, we'll get to another one where you can put, that's if you have unregulated faucets. If you put the aerators in, it saves you a lot of water also. There's 8 gallons right there. Dishwasher, 2 gallons a day, because hopefully you're not running your dishwasher every day with 1 plate and 1 cup and 1 spoon and 1 whatever. But when you wait and save it to when it's full, you can probably save a couple gallons of water every day in the process. If you're hand washing your dishes, please don't hand wash your dishes and then load them in the dishwasher and run the dishwasher. That's really an easy way to save water. And most dishwashers now are efficient enough that they can get them clean without all the pre-scrub. So if you are washing dishes in the sink, which a lot of people like to do, just turning off the water, not letting it run, will save you a bunch of water. So we're getting close to, we're probably not up to 40 yet. Full loads of laundry, that's probably not, it's an efficiency, but now most washers actually can set the water levels easily. So the gains there are less than we used to think because, in part, a half a load takes half as much water. But you do it does rinse, and it washes and it rinses every time. So there's a little bit of gain there, but not a lot. If anything in your house leaks, this is by far the biggest savings. So if you have one faucet that's just dripping a little bit, it will start catching that water over the course of a day. You will find a lot of water going down the drain from a leaky faucet. And the worst offender, I think, if you take a bath, you might still take baths. I took a bath once. I've owned this house I've been in this house 4 years. I've taken 1 bath. I don't don't know, what happened to bed? You know, baths used to be so much fun.
It's difficult to get into.
Thank you.
Or
That's a good point. I need a crane and a rope to like get me in and out. But there's a lot of water savings if you know, cut the bath, you know. I take up the other half of the water, so it doesn't matter, I don't have to fill it up that deep. So aerators are good, saves a lot of water because it reduces the flow. It just kind of reduces what comes out of the sink as it's going through there. I don't really think, you know, new efficient washers are probably, more the energy saving is probably the better reason to get them than the actual water savings, because water level indicators are pretty effective nowadays. Toilets are actually, because we use so much water in the bathroom, efficient toilets are a great way to save water. And now they have this new kind of configuration. If you've actually seen this in, you know, you go to the store, you go to Home Depot, you can actually see these things where we had, you know, don't have to flush every time. That's true. Or you can use the, you know, the mini flush, which is kind of a fun one, right? Like, and then when it needs it, you give it the. It sounds like, I mean, it's like an airplane engine when it sucks the water out of the toilet. It's really amazing. So that's kind of a, you know, and that'll save you a bunch of water as well. But the leaky toilet is the worst. If your toilet runs, when it's just, you know, you can just hear it running in the background, that little like, whatever. That is all the water, that's more water than you're probably using everywhere else in your house the rest of the day. It's just a running toilet. So if you fix that, you're gonna make a huge difference in your water bills, among other things.
You know,
But you don't get water bills, but
we
I,
had that happen when we first moved into this house, leaky, flushing toilet that wouldn't stop and we didn't pick it up, it drained our well.
it's possible,
It
I
took
mean,
3 hours to drain the well, yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
if it's running that hard,
yeah.
that's like a gusher. But even just a slow minimal leak can add up a lot, it can add up to a lot of water. And just remember, the water that you're not using today is the water that you have available for tomorrow and the next day and the next day. So it does matter, it matters for you, but it matters for everyone else, you know, in the neighborhood living around you as well. Shower heads is one of my favorites because we shower a lot. We're like the showering nation. And just going from 2.5 gallons a minute to 1.5 takes, you know, 10 times every minute that you're in the shower. Takes a lot of water out. And in a day, you know, if you have a family of 4 and everybody's going through the shower, and then if you're, you know, when your kids move back in the house with you, and they bring their kids, it's like, who are these people? My 2 daughters came to visit over the holidays. My one daughter got into the shower, and when she came out, she opened the door, the steam rolled out of the room, and the fan was actually dripping water because it was condensing. It was so cold outside. The water was condensing in the fan and actually dripping back into the room. Like, what are you doing in there? I thought, anyway, that's another story also. But lots of water can be saved in the shower because of, you know, inefficient shower heads. And you can get really high pressure, right? So that's the other thing. It used to be if you bought a low flow shower head, you had to like, you know, you try to shake it to get the water to come out. But they've really perfected this. Even in, you know, there are some really high-end hotels that are using low-flow shower heads that give you a great kind of shower experience. So, I also want to talk a little bit about outdoor water use. You know, this is not the season for it, but it's very important. So if you have a garden, anybody grow their own vegetables at all? That's great. That's great to see. Of course, you have to water them most of the time. That's part of what the drought has done for us is, you know, by having this irregular kind of sporadic rain through the summer, most plants, almost everything, your lawn, your shrubs, you know, the vegetables you're growing, you're going to need about 1 inch of water a week. That's kind of a rough estimate. Some use more. Shrubs in particular can reach deeper to get water. But by and large, you have to water things they need about 1 inch of water per week to grow healthy, you know, you want to grow healthy tomatoes. So if it doesn't rain in the summer, or if it comes all at once as a big thunderstorm and then it runs off, there you go. You just, you know, all your rain that you probably received about 1/4 inch of that rain, the rest of it all ran down in the gutters, and away we go. So we end up having to water more because of that. Yes?
I was gonna try a water barrel this year to collect water.
I love this crowd. You guys are all like, this is
Does that
my.
work?
So yeah, so lawns and landscapings are, you know, big thing. Gardens, of course. We all want to grow tomatoes. We want those prized tomatoes. We could have 4 of them. Save them. I grew like 6 tomatoes last year. It cost me $800 to grow 6 tomatoes. I could have bought half of California tomatoes. But, you know, if you have a pool, anybody have a pool? No, my neighbor does. I just jump in his pool when he's not home. So I don't have to pay for that, thank goodness. There you go.
There you go.
Get a rain barrel. What are the things you can do outside? 55-gallon rain barrel, that'll water your lawn for a long, or not your lawn necessarily, but water your garden for a long time. Flowers, if you just have, and of course you probably have 2 or 3 downspouts that you can connect to around the house. So easy way to save water by just not, and remember, the water that you use off the hose, that's drinking water. And if, in my case, where I get city water supply, they've treated it. They have spent millions of dollars to deliver drinking water to my home, and then I hook the hose up and squirt it on my flowers. That's such a crazy, our society is really built around crazy concepts. Like, people would give so much money to have that quality of drinking water available to them, and we're putting it on our lawns, we're putting it in our gardens. So, just a rain barrel as capture and use some other way. Fantastic way to save water. Lots of water can be saved here. Because we're getting these big gushing rainstorms, right? It comes 2 inches in 1 hour. You can fill up your barrel in one storm and use it for 2 weeks, maybe more, depending on how big your garden is. So that's one. I don't think anybody, this is not my driveway or sidewalk, but I don't think anybody's out there hosing off their driveways much anymore. That's kind of gone by the wayside. We've all been trained not to do, they trained this out of us, right? You can sweep it. Now they got those air blowers. That drives me crazy. It's like, get the broom, come on, just get the broom. It makes so much noise, 6 o'clock in the morning. Makes me nuts. Here's a good one, just as a simple thing, if particularly when, if your lawn is new, if you're replacing a section of your lawn that's gotten diseased, or you've had some pests come in and wipe out a section of your lawn, water in the morning. Water early in the morning is the best time, before 10 a.m. Water in the morning before 10 a.m. because you want to get the water down into the roots of your lawn. So if you decide you want to water your lawn, always try to water early in the morning. 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. is great. It gets the water down into the roots because the roots are what takes up the water. If you're watering the surface, these are actually leaves, right? In the grass world, or the plant world, this is a leaf. And so that blade of grass doesn't do anything when it gets wet. You need the water down in the roots. It pulls it out of the soil. So you want the water to infiltrate so that it's ready for the plant to use when it gets hot. As the day gets, progresses, starts to get hot, plant's going to suck for, reach in for water. You need it already infiltrated in the soil. So, and putting it on the middle of the day, of course, it's evaporating off those leaf surfaces faster than it's going into the soil. So water early. After sunset is okay. The problem with watering at night, because people will do this, set your timer. If you have a timer on your system, set the timer for night. Think, it'll be nice and cool, yeah, but it also promotes disease. So a lot of grass varieties develop diseases if they are wet over long periods of time at night. Surprisingly, we've got all these genetics of grass, but you can't get that to happen. You can't fix that. Okay, you can eliminate an irrigation cycle if you do have a lawn sprinkling system. Just dropping one out of the, your lawn won't die by missing one cycle in the course of a week, and it probably will save you a considerable amount of water. We took the numbers off this because it depends, right? How big is your lawn? How much area are you, how big is your garden? How much do you water? But just dropping out one irrigation cycle will probably work fine. It also works in your vegetable gardens. If you have a dry week, you could probably, if you're gonna water half an inch twice, you could probably skip one every couple of weeks. Your plants will survive deficit irrigation. They won't be quite as hardy, but they'll be fine. Adjusting the sprinklers so it's not, how many times you drive by the business and the water's going out on the road, hit your car. It's like, what are they doing? So, there's a lot better technology now. The sprinkler heads are really smart. You can, they have corner angles. They can do all kinds of shapes and sizes. But if you're dragging hoses around, just don't drag the hose where it's going to hit the sidewalk or the driveway, because that's just water loss. And this is the worst offender. So if you think a leaky toilet is bad, we've got people there looking around the state different times. If you find an irrigation system with a leak, it's like turning the hose on and leaving it out in the front lawn until it just runs and runs and runs. So any leaks in your system, please get those fixed right away, because that's a huge water loss. Mulch is a great idea for, if you're landscaping, you have some time, you're putting in new flower beds, you want to, whatever, always add mulch on your plants, or put some kind of cover over the soil, because it stores a lot of soil moisture. And so mulching is really critical. Now, having said that, some varieties of mulch, and I don't, whoops, I did it again. Trying to use this thing. Some varieties of mulch, I don't know if it's this one, but you'll notice if you're out watering your flowers, you start watering the mulch, the water looks like it just just shoots off really quickly. They actually the wood chips can become hydrophobic early on. So if they get too dry, they actually turn hydrophobic, which means they repel water. And so the water doesn't look like it's actually going in the soil. It can run right off the ground very quickly. So if you check your mulch every so often, you might want to give it like a little squirt to get it wettened up. If it's been really dry, you want to wet your mulch a little bit and then water your plants. So you give it a little shot of water and then kind of water them. It'll be much more efficient. And it's just kind of a strange character of some of the woods that they use in mulch. They're hydrophobic. It repels water. Composting is a great way to save water as well, because if you're not using your disposal, and of course it's great then to dump that back in the garden and use in soil if you do compost. That's great for it. It's a win-win. And if you have an irrigation system, install these water-efficient drip systems. Just to kind of give you a sense, when we work with the farmers, this is basically what we're doing for them. Not only we help them get wells, but putting in really highly efficient irrigation systems means they can deliver just the amount of water they want for each plant right at the plant. So they don't, if you probably 10 years ago, most farmers, if they were lucky, they'd have a big gun irrigation system. You see it, and out west, I worked in areas where they have center pivot irrigation, and you see big circles on the landscape where this is where the water goes. It's brown where the water doesn't reach because it's that dry out there normally. And so the big guns are really inefficient, and they kind of don't deliver the water as evenly as you might want it. This is far more efficient, so they can actually deliver right to the plant the amount of water it needs. They turn it on and off, as needed. Kind of technologies that they pretty much, sort of developed in greenhouses and could export out to, to our farmer fields, which is, fantastic. And then for those people that haven't, we don't have any of these around here in stores, but smart irrigation systems are really advanced now. They actually can be connected to weather systems. So the irrigation system knows that it's raining, doesn't turn it on. I mean, how many times, I saw this even right in front of our building in stores at the College of Ag. They were putting in new turf, and so they turned the water on, the guy left, it rained, and it was raining all afternoon, and the guns are going in the rain. Like, who is this person? I'm calling everybody out of who can turn off the water? Nobody, apparently. So, but they have these really efficient systems that will turn themselves off when it's raining, or if they, you can connect them to soil moisture. If it rained last night, it knows not to turn on the system today because the soil moisture tells it it's moist enough to not do that. And then just, replacing turf with landscape, whether that's, these are more desert varieties, but you can even, just any kind of shrub will use less water because shrubs actually have much deeper root systems, and so they can pull water from further down in the soil profile. So anytime you're taking out turf and putting in shrubs or, even big ornamental grasses that have deeper roots, you're going to save water doing that, and the plants will be hardier. That's part of that. Why we use native plants is because native plants are hardier at kind of extracting water from the places that they've had to learn to do that. Pools, you can repair leaks or put a cover on. This is what my neighbor did to me. He put a cover on his pool so I could go in. Which is smart. It's a good way for him to keep me out of his pool, right? Now we're going to talk about the other side of the piece of paper, which is, many of my colleagues don't like the word virtual, but that's what's widely used in science now, so we just go with it. Virtual water use is the other products that we use where you don't necessarily come in contact. It's not a direct use of the water. So when you turn on the spigot, you understand there's water going down the drain. But if you think about food, we don't often think about food in the context of water and how much water is used. There's water and energy. We're not going to do a lot with water and energy because it's complicated. The energy that we get in our homes is this blend of, it could be anything from solar or wind. It might be nuclear. It could be gas. It could be coal. It could be hydropower. So they all have different signatures attached to how much water it takes to produce nuclear energy, to how much it takes for hydropower. So we don't really deal much with water and energy, but just know that it's complicated and it's a lot of water. And then there's water in everything else that we use and kind of. So, saving water at home. This is kind of the real take-home message. Doing everything you can in your home. You do the 40-gallon challenge. You're gonna get to like 37 gallons and be like, I'm gonna squeeze out those last 3 gallons. I'm gonna make this work. I'm gonna get there every day. Yeah, but guess what? No matter what we do, that's a really small fraction of the actual water we use. Now, around the globe, we're very fortunate here in the U.S. to have so much water. Around the globe, they use much higher proportions of direct water use because they don't, they use a very, very little for themselves. But we have a lot of products. We are we are a very consuming kind of country. Anyway, most of this is not in the things that in the direct uses. Sadly, this data is hard. We couldn't get this into kind of gallons per day or something like that. This is basically the number of liters of water it takes to make 1 pound of whatever. So a pound of barley, 650 liters of water, 4,650 liters of water for a pound of beef. You can read them as well. 2,500, 1,000 cheeseburger, cup of coffee. So, well, that's actually a pound of coffee. So, the numbers are pretty extraordinary. They're very, very large in terms of what goes into food. Here's a classic one from another source, but essentially 46 gallons of water to make a 1 pint bottle of Coke. So 46 gallons of water for Coke. The actual water in the bottle is 16, 17 ounces, and then there's all these the supply chain, how much water goes into the manufacturing, how much water goes into the flavoring. That's the big winner, is it takes a lot to produce the sugar and the flavors that we get out of a bottle of Coke. So, given the choice, want to save a lot of water? Drink water. It sounds crazy, but my doctor told me, hey, you like orange juice? Just eat an orange and then drink a glass of water. You'll save, he wasn't worried about the water, he was worried about me, but get rid of the sugar, right? And so here you go, cheeseburger, 640 gallons of water for 1 cheeseburger. And, and most of which is right down here in our kind of, lump of meat, whatever it is, quarter pound of meat. So, so there you go. So now, I'm gonna stop now. I want you to flip your paper over and just think about what you've already done today and maybe what you'll do for dinner. Is that for me? Did everybody else hear that?
Yes.
Okay. So it's like, is this ringing through my head? So how many miles did you drive to get here? This is just a crude estimate. It's about 7 gallons of water to drive, 1 mile. So plug them in. What's that?
Where do you use the water when you're driving?
Well, it's the water that takes to produce the gas. So to refine the gasoline, right? There's a process. The process uses not a lot of water. Turns out.
And that counts the ethanol, right?
What's that?
That counts the ethanol.
Oh no, the ethanol is a whole. We're just going with simple stuff. But ethanol would be a completely different beast, and that signature is huge. I'll show you something about the signature of ethanol because it's huge. Because we're growing corn, which anyway, that was not good. So what you have for breakfast? Anybody have eggs and bacon? No? Healthy eaters. Toast? We didn't put like Dunkin'. I guess Dunkin' would have been a good one. Oatmeal, orange juice, coffee, a couple of coffees and teas. So just go through and check off those. Put in your 50s for all those, right? Now, Angie, just to be clear, Angie is a vegan. So she put avocados on here because she loves them and she eats them all the time. So that's like all of her water in food is in avocados, I think, because everything else she eats is pretty much, it's all vegetable matter.
So you should become a vegetarian.
We're gonna get there. Yeah, hold that thought. So, anybody have a burger and fries at lunch? Go down to Muya, have a nice big burger and fries? No? I thought about it. I didn't. But a turkey sandwich, not too bad. Bottle of Coke. Personal pan pizza over at Blaze. Love their pizza. We have great restaurants now, finally, in town. Isn't that? It's kind of fun. Bag of chips. And then what about dinner? Anybody have like baked potatoes? What are you gonna have tonight? Steak, a little chicken, throw some of that in there, a little salad, 8 stinking gallons for that salad. That's no good. Have some rice instead. Just kidding. Maybe a glass of wine to chase it all down. So give yourself, a second, try and add them up. You don't even have to do the full arithmetic. It doesn't matter if you get it, right to the last dot, whatever, digit. And then I just want you to, yes?
Except for salad, there's no vegetables on.
I know, well, we were gonna put in like carrots, and if you break it all down, I eat bag of carrots every day. They don't have a lot of water in them. You can just put 6 gallons for any vegetable. It's probably 5 or less for almost all your vegetables. Yes?
Nuts are not on here either, which are a great source of protein for,
You know what, I will
But they
go back
are-
and tell Angie, let's throw
they're
some nuts on
water-
there. She said there's enough nuts in the room when I talked to her. We don't need to put more nuts in the room, but that's a really good point. So we'll add some vegetables on this, because we can make it a little more.
Growing nuts uses a lot of water.
but yes, they do.
It does,
They use
it absolutely
a lot of
does.
water.
Almonds are,
Yeah.
almonds are big water users, and they're often grown, one of the things that you find, this is, while we're doing, while you're doing a little arithmetic, when I worked for USDA, one of my big complaints was, why on earth do we grow cotton in the desert? It doesn't make any sense, it's like the driest place in the world, except they have no pests. And so the cotton growers figured out that, all the pests that were in the southeast, they could avoid all of them when they moved out to Arizona, California, parts of New Mexico. They can grow cotton out there in Texas on the high plains. You don't run into quite as many pests. And so it made it possible for them to grow cotton without as much loss, but they're using enormous amounts of water to irrigate that cotton. And so, there's been a slow movement of cotton production back to the southeast, in part because the cost of water in the west has gotten so high that it's now competitive to just, figure out the pest problem than it was, compared to what it was before. But, when we grow alfalfa in the desert to feed cows, that's probably not a good use of water. But again, people think the immediate response is, let's get rid of the farms out in the Central Valley of California. They save a lot of water. Well, what's the alternative? It's either gonna be a desert or it's gonna be houses. So houses don't actually save as much water compared to the farms. So, there's a lot of big social issues wrapped around where and how and when do we use our water. How'd everybody do? So what'd you get for your number? Come on, Steve, fess up.
275.
275, and on the other side, it was what, 150,
Yes.
130? Anybody else get as low as that's in the day, 275?
Well, I'm a vegetarian, so but I do eat chocolate, so it was $18.50.
Chocolate's a killer, isn't it?
Yes.
I eat chocolate. Man, that's a killer. I eat chocolate. You know what? My mom, so I came out from a Catholic family. My mom said, you gotta give up something for Lent. I gave up chocolate and Coke. I saved a lot of money, and man, my footprint went right down, straight to nothing. Except I had a hamburger. So, anybody else? Anybody get anything near or over 1,000? Anybody have over 1,000? Yeah.
But I drink a lot of milk.
There you go. It's, and I'm not saying, this is just it. It's not wrong. It's just, what do we, where do we choose? We can make choices. Whoops. Is that, yeah, that's a wake up. Okay. So we can make choices. So we had this question, right? What happens if I'm a vegan? Holy cow, 300 gallons, that's your total footprint. When I'm a vegetarian, which I don't know what the difference is personally, but I know there's a difference. My wife tells me all the time. But look at me, here's me, meat eater, 4,000 gallons. There's a huge amount of water because we grow, who mentioned the ethanol problem? We grow enormous amounts of feed. We use a lot of our water in our country. Most of the corn product that we grow is grown for feed to either hogs or to beef. And so, that's a huge amount of water that goes into both the animal directly, they drink a lot of water, but they also eat a lot of grain that was irrigated. And so there's just tremendous amounts of water in our meat system. So, one of our big recommendations, try to pick one day a week and avoid meat. Just try it for one day. It's hard, believe me. I've done, I do it now, but if you can just pick one day a week, huge amount of water gets saved collectively. And if everybody did it, now the beef industry isn't real happy when we go around and tell people like, hey, you should stop eating meat. One day, just one day though, it actually makes a huge difference. So there's the best recommendation is just try it for one day. If you're, sometimes I don't think I can make it, but it's surprisingly easy. Here's the other thing that I want to encourage people to think about. We also waste an enormous amount of food. So end of the day, and like at UConn, dining halls are filled with chicken nuggets that people didn't eat. And we can't do anything with them. We have to get rid of them.
But
Yes.
the Mansfield Middle School gives it to local hog farmers.
Right.
They're left,
Right.
so
So
if the middle school could do it.
there's a whole new program to now repurpose food waste into other industries, and mostly into agriculture, where you can find it, if you have hog operations in particular, they're pretty good about eat anything. So, but there's an enormous amount of water. The food waste problem, are you getting the food waste talk later this year?
Yeah, we have to.
We have two
There you go.
classes.
So you're gonna have the food waste talk later this year is gonna talk about the problem with food waste. I'm here to tell you that waste carries a huge amount of water with it. All the water that we put into these products goes right into the garbage.
You said you worked for the Department of Agriculture?
I did.
And I remember years ago having cafeteria duty at breakfast time, and kids, evidently they had to take everything that was given to them for breakfast. And the number of little boxes of cereal, muffins, things that were being thrown out. So I was collecting them one day, I was gonna take them to the soup kitchen, and the cafeteria workers ran out and said, you can't do that. You have to throw that away. And I'm asking you, why? Why would I have to throw it? Was it opened or anything?
I wish I could answer that in a smart way. I don't know the answer to
Talk
that.
about
But they are changing a lot of those policies. So prepared foods still get thrown away. You go to the grocery store now, they have a whole section of prepared food, right? It's like you can buy chicken wings, you can get a salad, you can get all this stuff. They still have to throw most of that away at the end of the day. They can't repurpose it, they can't resell it, and they can't give it away. That's a crazy thing that they can't give it away. Cameron will talk to you, Cameron Faustman and John Van Dyke, I think, are coming. So they'll talk to you about how we can repurpose foods from these various places. But even, in the grocery store, there's so much, and they'll talk about labeling and things. You buy a gallon of milk, it says use by, right? Or sell by. What's the difference between use by and sell by? Well, sell by to me says it's gonna be good for a couple more days. Use by means when it hits that date, I'm throwing it out. But the grocery stores do a lot of that stuff. They can't have it on the shelf if it says sell by and it's past that date. Right? So they take it all down, throw it away. Now they're repurposing that. They're giving it to food, to all kinds of collections, places, etc. So just, but try to, this is another one of those big challenges, and you can save a huge amount of water by just taking better portions if you go out to eat. Order the right, you can't always order the right size, but we have become this supersized nation. Hey, don't get the regular fries, get the supersized fries. It's 30 cents more. You feel bad for not doing it, right? It's like, hey, I'm gonna eat a burger and fries, I might as well pay 40 more cents. You get a burger this big and a bag of fries, it looks like, feed an army. That's a really bad choice. Both for the water, but also because by the time, if I don't eat it all, I'm throwing all those just gallons of water going down the drain or into the garbage. And then the garbage becomes its own separate problem with water. And then there's transportation. We don't do a lot around this other than it's a complicated thing, and the production is huge. Is a really interesting. People have tried to break down how much water is used in the production of a car, how much water is used in the production of the fuel. Every one of those life cycles has this really complicated diagram that's attached to it, because where it comes in, if you look at ethanol, where that water comes in, how it gets used, how it's, the different blends that you can buy mean that you'll get different amounts of water in every piece of that. And so, we sort of just alert people that it's a lot of water if you're driving a car all the time. And different, and various cars probably have bigger signatures than others. But at the end of the day, the fuel can be problematic, but the vehicle itself also has a bunch of water tapped in it. And then here you go, biofuel, 3.2 million barrels per day. It's approaching 20% of all water for agriculture worldwide is going into ethanol. So it's a huge amount of water. Because we're not eating that as a food product, we're actually using it in other ways. And I think, that's a real challenge for the Department of Agriculture, who is in the business of making sure that our farms are successful. We don't want farmers going out of business, so we do need farmers to keep farming, but we have to find better ways, I think. I work for the Department of Agriculture, I love everything they do. I just feel like we've got to think differently about biofuel, because we're talking about putting a lot of our water, and a lot of our best cropland is going into something to, drive it around in the cars. And so there's probably a better repurposing of that agriculture. But again, if you live and work in the Midwest, where they grow a lot of the corn, those farms, they have millions of dollars in investments in agriculture to produce corn. You just can't walk in there overnight and say, I don't think we should grow corn here anymore. Let's get rid of that. I mean, they have millions and millions of dollars in loans and equipment and everything else. That infrastructure is incredible. We have to figure out a sort of different path to change all that. This is Angie's favorite. Roughly 250 gallons of water to make your smartphone. Now, I have a smartphone. A lot of people have smartphones, but there's a lot of water tied up in in that process as well. And then here's one that I point back to her. She wears jeans. I said, okay, well, there you go. That's 2,000 gallons of water to produce your pair of jeans. That's, a lot of that is right here. Growing cotton in the desert. Just a lot of water. But those are good looking jeans, wouldn't you say? So, just to kind of wrap up, and then, well, it's been a long time, but we'll take questions if you have some more questions. Every country, then, you can think about this. So there are now scientists who are thinking about this, not just at the local level, but what about this at the global level? So we produce enormous numbers of products in the United States, and we send them all over the world. So there are people, essentially, you can think of this as a map of countries who import lots of water and countries who export lots of water. And I think this is a really interesting way for us to now view the world in a kind of different sense, because we have this global market of products, and those products have all that water embedded in them. And so some places end up becoming receivers of lots of water, and other places are deliverers of lots of water. And we get, the goods and services in a global economy are moving all those things around in different ways all the time. And so, Brazil is producing lots of agricultural products that go to Western Europe, and they're big exporters, same as US. We also have, as you know, global trade with China and much of Asia. And so all these agreements now are not just moving products in the classic sense, they're moving water. And scientists are beginning to look at, what does this mean for the future of where water exists and how it's being used? And I did some work in the Middle East where they grow vegetables and products for kind of Southern Europe, and they export all of it. It's like, you don't have any water at all, but it was better for them, their economy. It was better to actually grow the products and sell it in the European market, make more money than if they actually tried to do it locally. So, but they were exporting probably their rarest commodity that they had, which was their water, through these different products. That's it. Food choices are where you really have all your signature, your water footprint is tied up in our food choices and in our daily lives. And so, there's no bad guys in this story. I hope there's no bad guys in this story. This is really about just trying to help you make more informed choices as you think about your day. When you get up in the morning, my goal would be, if you get up in the morning and think, today I might save a little extra water. I'm going to try and do one extra thing to save some water. That makes a difference to me, because that's what we're really all about. Every little drop that you save helps the streams and rivers, keeps our water supplies fresh and healthy, and it doesn't seem like a lot, but it can make a huge difference. So thanks very much for your attention. Yeah, question?
How about
Desalination, yeah. So if you live in like the dry parts of the world,
progress in that area.
they've made tons of progress.
Yeah.
I saw the Ashkelon water facility in Israel produces 10 million gallons a day. Or maybe 10 million gallons an hour. I mean, they produce more water than, it was enormous. It's bigger than like this whole complex. It's a giant center to take salt water, turn it into fresh water.
What do they use for fuel?
Well, that's the problem. So they're right now, I think they're using,
Solar?
I think, no. Now, there are some small solar operations, but this is mostly either coal or gas. They're using like petroleum products to do that. So desalination is really critical if you live in a dry climate where you have a lot of salt water available. It is also extraordinarily expensive and energy intensive. And so the energy sources become the problem.
So because the energy source uses water to produce, unless it's.
Yeah, they're making much more water.
Or
So
nuclear,
yeah.
then you're really moving the water from one place to another rather than producing it.
But the amount they can produce on the amount, so the water and the energy is far less than the water they're producing, millions of gallons. It is there, but
Okay.
they produce a much higher ratio of water to energy. The problem is that, number one, it's very energy intensive, so you have to have, I mean, we're burning through all these fossil fuels faster to produce fresh water. But, you know, in a place like Israel, they've decided that fresh water is more important than petroleum or money or anything else because they just don't have it. And so they are committed to these very large desalination plants. They're building them in California, and they're making, you know, on a smaller scale. But, the whole science around that desalination process is really about energy, you know, kind of configuring the energy used to do it because it's very energy intensive. And it's just not efficient enough to produce water. The cost of water from that source is probably 4 times as much as a natural water source. And so until they can bring that cost closer to the same, it just, you know, use it in extreme measures only. But they do, somebody said solar, there are some portable solar units that have been developed for the military. So if they're out in the middle of nowhere, right, and there's a salt water source, they could actually draw some salt water and convert it into a freshwater supply, a small freshwater supply. So they've done that with like very low energy input, and that's been successful, but it's really hard to take it to scale because you have to collect so much solar energy to produce enough water, you know, to help a large population. Yeah.
How effective have, like, probably more out in the West, bans on use of water between certain times of the day?
Mm-hmm.
Does that actually work? I mean,
It
how do
can.
they enforce it, I
It
guess?
can. You know, public shaming is probably the most important enforcement agent. Your neighbors are far more likely to turn you in than the government is going to like drive around in cars and find people watering on the wrong day. It's sort of surprising in the West, and I've lived in the West, and I only have one example living in Utah. But because of the way the water is delivered, you actually have more water than you'd be surprised at how much water is available. So when I lived in Utah, I lived in Logan. Logan Canyon was, it's just this giant reservoir of snow. And so all through the summer, July, August, September, we were getting just huge amounts of water coming out of the mountain. And they would just divert it right off the mountain, and it came down our street, and it came in this little gutter, and it pressurized all the local lawn systems. So I had a lawn irrigation system, turn it on, water my lawn. And I could use it like every other day. I had access to that water. It turns out I never had to turn on my my sprinkler, because the lady that lived next to me up the hill, just, a little, like a foot higher, her lawn was a foot higher than mine. She overwatered her lawn, so I sub-irrigated my lawn. So I got all the water that she didn't, that she wasted, just kept my lawn water. It's, those regulations work, but it only works to the extent that people keep having lawns. One of the big programs in Las Vegas probably had the highest water use in the country for, decades on a per capita basis. And they just realized they were going to run out of water way before they ran out of people. And so they've been paying people to get rid of lawns. They literally will write you a check. It's like, get rid of your turf, here's a check. And because it's such a waste of water. And that's been very successful. I mean, they've gotten rid of, probably 80% of the lawns out there. And, a lot of the big fountains that you see on display in Vegas are using recycled water instead of just fresh water, right out of the spigot kind of water. So they're coming up with innovative solutions.
What do they use in place of the turf if they're getting rid of their lawn?
They xeriscape, so they'll put like rock gardens in and put in some there are beautiful flowering plants that grow in the desert. They just don't flower as often. I mean, I think the challenges, and I kind of keep an eye out for this when I'm traveling, particularly in the Southwest. Go to a big hotel in the Southwest. They almost always will have this beautiful flower display in front of the hotel. And it's like, why do we need tropical plants growing in front of hotels in the Southwest? And more they're starting to get rid of those things because it's costing them money. Their water bills are just too extraordinary, you know? Now, I'm also one of those folks who, you know, if I'm paying $300 a night and they say, hey, turn the faucet off and do this and reuse your towel, it's like, why would I want to reuse a towel if I'm paying you $300 a night to stay here? I'd be able to get a fresh towel every day. You know, I guess it's sort of a cultural thing, but it's sort of annoying that they're asking me to save water for them when they're charging me $300 a night. I don't get a discount for reusing my towel. But, anyway, that's a different story.
Yeah, I don't know whether you can answer this question, but why is the MDC in the towns that, you know, depend on MDC for water, they charge, I think, by taxes, by what your taxes are, rather than by usage. So there's no deterrent to using water, and when we were worried about a drought, people were still watering their lawns. And
Right.
again, that doesn't seem like it makes any sense when you've got so many area communities dependent on the MDC for water. Do you know the answer to that?
I don't. I know that the MDC has more water than they can use.
Well,
And that's part of, you know, that's a good thing, right? So we always have this big water supply in our back pocket, but it doesn't promote conservation, which is a disappointing thing.
it is. It seems crazy not to have some kind of.
But I don't know their billing structure. I know that on my bill, I was given like a $10 credit for implementing conservation that would lower my water. You know, I mean, so back to the shaming thing, which I mean, people think it's you know, it won't be successful, but how many people on their energy bill get the smiley face that says you're in the top 10 to 20% of your neighbors? And then there's like, disappointing, you didn't quite make it to the top 20%. And then there's like, what the heck are you doing? Turn the lights off in your house, right? So they have those three different levels. It's like the really best, the in-betweens, and the stinkers. And so nobody wants to be a stinker, right? It's like Lake Wobegon, we all want to be above average. And so like, I'm gonna turn the lights off. I'm gonna find, I mean, I went through my house. You'd be surprised now with so many electronics, right? Your computer, if you leave your computer plugged in, it's drawing a little power all day long. If you leave the printer turned on, it's drawing power all day long. Even if you're not printing, it's still drawing power. I mean, there are all these devices that we keep plugged in. Just go around and unplug all those until you need it. It's a huge amount. You'll see a big change in your energy bill. Now, what's the perverse side of this, which we didn't talk about in our slides, but I love to sort of share the story. I was at a national meeting on water conservation, and I was fortunate enough to sit next to someone who didn't work for the MDC, he worked for a different private water company, and probably, you know, west of the 100th meridian. So we're talking, and I said, so if I'm a homeowner, and I do a really great job this year, and I conserve all the water possible, and you're the water company, what do? I said, I raise your bill. I charge you more, because I gotta make money. I'm a private company. I have to make money for my shareholders. I have to make money for the people that keep us in business. And so I charge you more for conservation. Doesn't that sound stupid? I mean, I did the right thing, and now you want to bill me more for it. So we do have some perverse kind of incentives in the game. Yes?
Well, that's with all renewables. I know Germany, you know, they're so good at all these, you know, solar and everything else, but then the cost of generating the electricity has to be spread over fewer people. So, right there, I mean, and that's not a private company, that's, you know, I don't
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a crazy thing that we create these perverse incentives to charge ourselves more for the same thing because we save. So it's kind of crazy, yes.
When I lived in Phoenix area in Arizona, various parts for about 30 years. And one of the things that you learn how to do if you live there and you travel through the desert long distances is I always carried a solar still in my car because you could pull water out of the Arizona air about a quart a day using
Really?
solar.
Really? There you go.
Now, I don't know if it would work here.
Probably won't work
There's
then,
so much
right.
sunlight,
Yeah.
you know, there compared to here. But yeah, everybody who was out and about in the desert had a solar.
But they also don't have big lawns. I mean, they've really tried to promote, like, shrink your lawn footprint because indoor water use still pales by comparison, across the US at least. Indoor water use pales by comparison to outdoor water use, pales by comparison to food. So if you were kind of scaling things, make a small change in your food, huge change in water. outdoor water use comes next. If you have outdoor water use, you can make little changes, you know, skipping the irrigation cycles, shortening your irrigation cycles, makes a big change in the amount of water use. I mean, unfortunately, shortening your shower, and I'm not saying don't do it, because I want you to cut your shower down by 2 minutes every day, but shortening your shower really doesn't save a tremendous amount of water, but those little bits do help. I mean, imagine 3 million people in the state, if everybody took 2 minutes off their shower, that's a couple million gallons a day. Yes.
I was visiting someone in Ventura some time ago,
Okay?
and they tactfully told me that their water bill has 2 levels. There's a basic amount
Mhm.
based, I think, on the size of the family, and excess water over that is like 10 times as much per gallon as the basic level.
Right,
There's a hell of an incentive
There's an incentive.
to not go to the basic level,
right.
Yes.
which is a pretty tight threshold.
Yes, yes, that's a really great point, and they have, the economists have studied differential pricing on water in order to see if you can change, so this is all about changing behavior, right? I mean, here's 100 different tips for how to change your behavior. This is a behavioral thing. So how do you get people to change their behavior? Mostly, we try to do it through their pocketbooks. We say, if it's gonna cost you more money, you'll do less, right? So differential pricing is one of those things. But here's the other side of that coin, which is kind of the perverse part of it. In California, you get a block of water per capita, right? So if I have a family of 4, let's just make up a number. I get 100 gallons a person, so I get 400 gallons. If I go to the next block, whatever that is, that's usually a block of, if it was probably like 1,000 gallons for my family. The next block is also 1,000 gallons, and it'll cost me 10 times as much. The minute I start using water in that block, I have to pay for the whole block. So what do? I use it all. So now, so wait,
Is that the way it works?
no, that's the way it has worked. And so they're changing this because what they told people is you have to buy blocks of water. So your family block is this much because there's a human, that's their human right to water. And that's a whole nother day because if I live in the middle of the desert, what's my human right to water? Do you have to bring it to me? Do I have a right to claim the same amount of water that you get here if I live out there in the middle of the desert? Nah, probably not. Anyway, but they were selling blocks of water. And so the first block was $5, 1,000 gallons. The next block was $50, 1,000 gallons. Well, I'll pay the 50. And then I get 1,000 gallons. And I can do whatever I want with it. It was driving people crazy because they were paying for the whole block of water. And then, my goal was to use every drop right up to the top of it. So there was, again, it was like this perverse, don't conserve water because if you're gonna buy the block, use the whole thing. So there have just been these failed attempts to try and get people to do the right things, but it had a contrary effect because of the way they were doing it. So, now they can, what you're talking about is direct metering, right? So they can actually bill you for the very gallon that you use instead of, if you use 1,000, you get one bill. If you use 2,000, you get a different bill. Or if you use 1,100, you get the same bill as 2,000. Well, then I'm gonna use my other 900. I'm gonna wash my car and, do everything else I wanna do because there's no point. Yes?
We have beverages on our list here, but
Yes.
we don't have bottled water.
You want to know? So I visited with the American Beverage Association, and it's been 6 or 7 years ago. I went to a big meeting of the American Beverage Association, and they were trying to figure out their water footprint. And so they all got together, they're the beer producers, the soda producers, everything you can imagine. And they're all owned by food companies, basically. Frito-Lay owns one, and somebody else, Beatrice owns, somebody. They're all kind of together like that. A bottle of water, so Nestle, which makes bottled water. Nestle stood up and nobody wanted to tell what they used because it's like a trade secret. And plus, think about this. If Coke announces to the world, it takes us 65 gallons to make a bottle of Coke, what will Pepsi do?
Do it for 60.
Pepsi will say, we can do it for 60. And then, and then RC Cola will say, well, we can do it for 55. If you want to be environmentalist, buy our product. And they'll just keep undercutting each other, and they'll change their own formulas to figure out who can go, how low can we actually go. But Nestle stood up and said, it only takes us 1.5 liters of water to produce a 1 liter bottle of water. So,
How about the bottle itself?
it's like, well, why would you even think that's a good thing? It's like, it's still just water. You know, they're taking tap water and filling up bottles, and it's 1.5 liters to do it. It's like, just drink it out of the tap. I mean, you know, if you like filtered water, go get a filter. Filters are cheap.
The water they sell as UConn bottled water in the library comes from Wellington.
It's, yeah. We don't have waters. I mean, we have a water supply, but we don't bottle water. It's bottled by somebody else. You calling it, let's call it.
Let's call it day. I
Thank you,
hesitate.
you've been a great audience. And stay water.
I hesitate to give any sort of gift now, because the pen is like 5,000 pounds. Plastic is who knows where, it had to come from China on a boat and so forth, and
That was salt
cup,
water.
and then he's gonna use it for coffee,
Yeah.
you know. So this is truly an evil thing.
The more coffee
Thank you. You know-
the more coffee you drink.
Yeah, that's right. It reduces the effect of this cup is only bad on the first cup. The other 10,000 is all right. You know, 2 years ago when I got invited, this is the reason I wanted to come, because I saw these mugs. I was like, man, I gotta get one of those mugs. I sat here with the dean, and I was like, I didn't get invited. Then I sat here with the president, I didn't get invited. But it's been great. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.